In 2020, Lufthansa didn't just retire the Airbus A380, they buried it. The airline's CEO called the world's largest passenger jet a financial mistake, shipped the fleet to the desert, and openly swore they would never fly those super jumbos again. But today, those same dead aircrafts are literally the only thing keeping Lufthansa's long-haul schedule from collapsing under the weight of delayed deliveries and exploding demand. This is not just an about-face, this is arguably the single most expensive and humbling U-turn in commercial aviation history, and you're about to understand why it happened, how it happened, and what it means for the future of the airline industry. To understand Lufthansa's decision, you have to go back to April 2020. The world had just ground to a halt. Borders were closed, entire fleets were grounded. Airlines that normally burn fuel in the air to make money were now burning cash on the ground just to survive. This was the moment of truth for every airline. CEOs scrambled looking for places to save money, and one of the first targets for many carriers was obvious. Big, four-engine jets that guzzled fuel and carried hundreds of passengers. At Lufthansa, the man making those calls was Carsten Spohr, a veteran of the airline industry, known for his strategic focus and no-nonsense approach. He looked at the A380, a plane Lufthansa had invested heavily in for nearly 2 decades, and he made a brutal decision. These aircrafts were done. Finished, never coming back. He didn't sugarcoat it. He told the world the A380 was a financial mistake. He said Lufthansa wouldn't operate the type again. And then, in an act that at the time seemed final, he sent most of the fleet to a dry lake bed in Teruel, Spain. If you've never seen photos of Teruel's aircraft storage, imagine this. Row after row of jets, their windows taped, engines sealed, in the blazing Spanish sun. It's where planes go to be left forever. An aircraft cemetery. And for Lufthansa's A380s, that's where they went. Lufthansa's plan was simple. Ditch the inefficient 4-engine jets and replace them with modern, fuel-efficient twin-engine aircrafts. The backbone of that strategy was the Boeing 777X, a new generation of large, long-haul jets that promised substantially lower fuel burn and operating costs. The hope was that this fleet modernization would not only cut costs, but position the airline for a post-pandemic rebound. The A380 in this view was simply too big, too costly, and with global travel down 90%, unnecessary. Economists, analysts, and yes, even aviation geeks largely understood this logic. At the time, fierce critics of the A380's economics felt vindicated. Lufthansa, one of the world's largest and most respected airlines, had officially abandoned the type. But if you look closely at what Lufthansa bet on, you'll see the seeds of the crisis that followed. The entire plan hinged on Lufthansa getting its first Boeing 777X in 2020. Then 2021, then as schedules slipped, 2022. As those delivery dates pushed further back, the airline's future fleet plan looked less like a strategic evolution and more like a massive hole. Why was Boeing late? It wasn't just one thing. The company was already reeling from the fallout of the 737 MAX groundings, a crisis that had shaken regulators' trust and tightened certification scrutiny. Then came production issues on the 787 Dreamliner and a global supply chain stretched thin by the pandemic. Regulators were understandably cautious, demanding extensive testing for the new, more advanced 777X. The result? A cascade of delays. Weeks turned into months, months into years, and Lufthansa was left in a bind. They had retired or sold off older wide-bodies, they had no A380s in service, and the jets they were counting on weren't coming. This created what industry insiders now call the capacity gap, a mismatch between available aircrafts and surging passenger demand. Around the world, pent-up demand exploded as travel restrictions eased. People started flying again in numbers no one predicted. The post-pandemic rebound was nicknamed revenge travel, a desire to make up for lost trips. But here's the cruel twist. Demand rebounded fast on long-haul routes, exactly the kind of routes that A380s and 777Xs are best suited for. Routes like Munich to New York, Frankfurt to Singapore or Frankfurt to Johannesburg suddenly had more passengers than Lufthansa could comfortably carry, especially in premium cabins. Smaller wide-bodies like the Airbus A380 or Boeing 787 could help, but they simply couldn't match the sheer volume of passengers Lufthansa needed to move on key hub routes. And because premium passengers, first and business class, account for a disproportionate share of airline profits, Lufthansa needed seats that could generate significant revenue, not just any seats. That's where the A380 unexpectedly became more than just nostalgia. In April 2022, Lufthansa made a decision that stunned the aviation world. They announced they were reactivating the A380 fleet for summer 2023. The very planes declared dead were coming back. Executives internally described this announcement as a kind of public mea culpa, an admission that the original retirement had been premature and that the airline now desperately needed those aircrafts to cover its capacity shortfall. Imagine being in the room where that decision was made. For years, you'd argued the A380 was inefficient, costly, and obsolete, and now you were about to spend tens of millions of dollars bringing them back into service because you had no viable alternative. It wasn't pride, it was survival. Bringing an A380 out of storage is not like starting a car that's been parked for a weekend. These jets had been sitting in deep storage for nearly 3 years, and aircrafts in this state require painstaking work before they can fly again. Every system from hydraulics to avionics has to be checked, tested, and often replaced. Fluids degrade, seals dry out. Landing gear that has supported hundreds of tons of weight can suffer from corrosion even in dry climates. Lufthansa's process began with ferrying the planes from Teruel back to Frankfurt. But Frankfurt was only the beginning. Some of the most intensive maintenance work was sent to Lufthansa Technic's facilities in Manila, a location chosen for its specialized expertise and cost efficiencies. Inside the hangars, engineers had to completely overhaul these aircrafts. It's estimated that reactivating a single A380 can cost anywhere from $5 million to $10 million. Multiply that by 8 mom, and you're looking at an $80 million reversal on top of the original retirement decision. These projects took months. Parts had to be sourced, some of which were no longer regularly stocked. Systems had to be updated to the latest regulatory standards. Flight tests had to be run. Crews had to be retrained. There were logistical hurdles at every turn. But slowly, one by one, the sleeping giants came back to life. To the casual traveller, it might seem strange that Lufthansa would spend so much to bring back a plane it once called a mistake. But there's a clear economic logic behind it. First, capacity. In the premium market, airlines make a large proportion of their profits. An A380 can carry significantly more first and business class passengers than a smaller twin-engine jet. In a market where premium demand was booming, that seat density translated directly into revenue. Second, customer perception. The A380 has become, for many passengers, the gold standard of long-haul comfort. It's quieter, more spacious, and importantly, associated with a higher-end travel experience. For Lufthansa's brand, restoring that experience was a strategic advantage. Third, timing. With 777X deliveries still uncertain and older models long since phased out or sold, Lufthansa had a choice: operate more of the aircrafts they already owned, or scramble for short-term leased jets that might not deliver the same economics. In other words, even though reactivating the A380 was expensive, the cost of not doing it, lost passengers, lost revenue, and an inability to compete on key routes, could have been far higher. Once reactivated, Lufthansa chose to base much of the A380 fleet in Munich. This wasn't accidental. By concentrating these large aircrafts at one hub, the airline could maximize connectivity and deploy the A380 on the longest, highest demand routes that benefit most from its size. Munich essentially became Lufthansa's super jumbo hub. It was a bet that passengers flying from Europe to distant destinations would choose flights offering extra comfort and premium space. And early data on load factors and revenue performance suggests that Lufthansa's bet has paid off. Moreover, the airline has now publicly committed to keeping the A380 in service at least through the end of the decade. That's a remarkable turnaround from never again in 2020 to necessary until 2030 in 2026. It's a statement not just about the A380 itself, but about how unpredictable aviation strategy can be in a volatile world. Lufthansa proved that in a world where Boeing can't deliver planes, old metal is better than no metal. Behind every strategic decision are thousands of real people. It wasn't just about dusting off seats. Pilots had forgotten the muscle memory of landing a 500-ton beast. Sensors were clogged. If they missed one check during reactivation, that saving grace becomes a safety nightmare. Across Lufthansa, this process built a kind of institutional memory. Skills that were at risk of being lost forever had to be preserved, and that has long-term value for the airline's operational resilience. Did Lufthansa make a mistake in retiring the A380 in the first place? Probably not. Given the context of 2020, it made sense. The world was collapsing. Cash was king. Cutting costs quickly was essential. But did they underestimate the role those aircrafts would play in the recovery? Absolutely. That's where strategy met reality, and reality won. The decision to bring the A380 back was expensive. It was awkward, it was humiliating in a way, but it was also pragmatic. Lufthansa didn't have many good options, only trade-offs between bad and worse, and they chose the one that kept planes in the sky and passengers flying. In the end, the A380 may not be the future of aviation, but it's very much part of the present. And for Lufthansa, it has become both a lifeline and a lesson in humility. So, did Lufthansa make a mistake? In 2020, killing the A380 looked like the only smart move. They were bleeding cash, and the world had stopped. But they underestimated the one thing you can never predict in this industry: revenge travel. The A380 was supposed to be a dinosaur. Instead, it became the lifeboat that saved Lufthansa's profit margins. It was a humiliating, expensive, and messy U-turn. But it worked. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.